I am the voice of Snowbird Nation, Mike Searcy.
Welcome back, everybody, to the music studios of SBN Network. And I'm here joined by Dr. Mike Searcy, CEO and founder of Snowbird Nation. And welcome, everybody.
Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be back. We're going to talk a little bit about business planning and what does it take in order to kind of envision your year, envision your income, and try and figure out, just answer the question, how much money is it going to take for me to get to where I want to go, thus goal setting. And let's go ahead and start walking us through that. With us today, we have Candace Rausch. Candace, just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey here into real estate.
Hi, my name is Candace Rausch. Recently licensed within the last 6 months. Looking for a transition opportunity with real estate. I'm currently a business analyst for the county here in Arizona.
Welcome to the call, Candace. Awesome. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at our goal setting business planning spreadsheet, in depth, and we're going to use Candace as an example as she's going through, because this is really the first time she's seeing the sheet as well. And without further ado, let's just go over. So right now we're looking at tab number 1, income goals, and just general housekeeping. I just want to put this out there, because I know this looks like real confusing and a lot of verbiage and everything else. I just want you to focus on the light yellow colored areas, especially the ones because that's really where you're going to input something into the sheet. The rest of the stuff is formulated, to give you your annual goal. So in this particular case, if you look down column D, where it says monthly total, that's where your inputs are going to be. And all the way at the bottom at D29, you'll have your take-home target. So basically, you go through this and you're looking at it, and there's a lot of different categories here: your mortgage, your rent, your gas, car maintenance, cable, internet, so on and so forth. All the expenditures that you're spending pretty much on a monthly basis, we want to total those up on sheet number 1, because this is your income goals. Once you do, so if you look at this here, home gas, I got $60, cable $79, water $100. It goes down to the bottom. If you look at D27, it's got a cost of living baseline total. So in this case, it was $3,204. It automatically is going to multiply that times 12, which is going to bring your annual total to $38,448. And then again, you want to bring home, or you want to plug in a number for your target take home. What is it that you actually want to take home from the business? So that might be $6,250, right? However that's broken down, and you get to input that number. The rest of the sheet is formulated. So it's telling you, okay, well, that's 75 grand a year. And here's another real cool thing on the side here. In column A, I've got kind of the descriptions of each one of those. You can kind of read through it and it makes a little bit more sense. But as you get down to the bottom, what the number that we're really looking for here is in cell E36. And it's telling me that my actual goal in this case is $147,482. That's my goal. And that number, and we'll see on the other sheets, it's going to just move it over to the next spreadsheet and so on and so forth. And then we're going to continue on from there. Mike, any comments? Candace, any comments on this sheet?
One of the interesting things that I also often look at on this is I want to ask you just a quick question that might appear to be unrelated. Steve, okay. If I were driving, how do I get to Seattle?
If you were driving, you would probably use a map or GPS.
Use a map or a GPS. One of the things I often ask people is I will pick up that question and say, how do I get to Seattle? And they'll start saying, well, you got to go north on the I-17 until you get to approximately, and then we'll start figuring all this out. And then halfway through, I'll kind of interject from Chicago.
Right.
Point being, unless we really have a very good understanding of where we are now, trying to figure out where we want to go is nearly impossible. This is a great basis to kind of look at and say, where are we now? It's the first step in many ways to putting together a budget. And let's face it, there's an awful lot of people in this world who have yet to ever write down and put together a real budget. So this is actually accomplishing a lot of steps all in one Excel spreadsheet.
It's awesome. It's awesome. This is sort of like the GPS here.
It is. It is. Absolutely. Shall we move on to part two?
Let's go ahead and move on to part two.
Candace, any questions so far?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Part two is probably the most complicated portion of the sheet and least complicated portion of the sheet. I'm going to throw that out here. So what it's doing is it's calculating your gross commission income. How do we get, if you remember from sheet one, our total goal income was $147,482. So when we go to sheet two, if you look in the top, that number automatically pulls over. And using, EXP has their own formulas and the way that they break down. And then Snowbird Nation, being on a standard team, has their own ways of breaking this down. So what we did for Snowbird Nation is we built in that equation into this number. And basically, again, real simple, follow the light yellow colors. In this sheet, I've already calculated that. So you can see right there in D6, I got a sales price of $2 million. Well, that means that I need to sell roughly about $2 million in the year in order at a commission rate of about 3% to get me to about $34,148. That's 80%. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Again, this stuff automatically formulates those light yellow colored squares up at the top. That's kind of like a guide already. You can manipulate those if you want, but that's kind of a standard. So let's just call that the baseline. So again, if we scroll down, $34,000 a year, I'm sorry, $34,148 is that 80% of the 2 million.
Does that get us to capping?
That gives us to capping. Okay. That allows us to cap. That's exactly what that is. So goal income less pre-cap transactions. If I'm looking at B27 is $100,000. So now that's pre-cap numbers is the 34,000. So what do I need to do post-cap numbers? That's the I need to have another 2,100,000 to hit my overall goal. So that's $63,000. Total sales needed to obtain goal at 3% is 4,100,000. That gives me $97,148 in commission. And the splits, you can kind of see that there, again, it's all totaling for you. Keep going down a little bit further, Mike. Right here, you're talking into running a business cost. How much does it cost to actually run this? And you need to factor these numbers in, your board dues, your MLS fees. I think here in Arizona, we spend $1,000, $1,500 a year just to maintain our license and to keep it going and to be able to get in people's houses using Supra and so on. All of that stuff needs to be factored in. Your marketing fees, the cost of your apparel and what you're putting on your car, all of those numbers you want to factor in here. In this case, in this example, we're saying, hey, the annual total is I'm going to spend about $9,261. So my targeted gross income after everything gets formulated down is $106,409. That's my targeted gross income. That's pre-cap and post-cap. That's what I'm actually taking home. This is a pretty complicated sheet, but again, it's not really that complicated. Just follow the light yellow areas, and it kind of follows through. And I'm basically, those arrows are just showing you where the numbers are going in order to get to our targets.
I just got to interject here for a moment, Steve.
Please.
Did you just tell our entire audience to follow the yellow brick road?
Follow the let's rock and roll on that one. Yeah. Oh yeah. As long as we're not going through like, some area where they're throwing fake snow on us, I think we'll be okay.
Okay, so I just kind of a bit of a recap. So part one, we want to look at what's it going to take for you to personally live, plus what do you want to actually have in your pocket to be able to enjoy life.
Right.
Part
Exactly.
two, this is how we're looking at trying to get to our numbers. And having done that, well, we all know that it is basically going to take money to make money. And so Snowbird Nation and EXP, they get certain cuts for their contributions for making your career happen and supporting your work. And this is all something that if you don't fully understand, we'll want to make up, you want to actually contact the person who shared this video with you so that you can actually go through this a little bit step by step. And if they don't fully understand it, they're going to come back to us and we will help them explain it to you as well. But if we go through this, then we also have to say to ourselves, great, this all looks good, but now let's look at it and say, it costs money in a business to make money. What exactly are those costs? Because it's always amazing when you talk to an entrepreneur, when they say to you, I can't afford to advertise, and then they wonder why they're out of business shortly thereafter. With dues and fees and advertising and marketing, those are the things that when you're suffering, you should be putting more money into, not less. Cutting back on various items in your business expenses can hurt the business. But having thought about that and looked at it, we have to recognize there are business expenses. Here they are. Let's go through them. If you don't know them, talk to somebody more experienced so that you can put together a budget that makes sense. When it comes to marketing, you either have time or you have money. Sometimes we get both. But if you don't have one, you've got to lean in on the other. So we're going to take that now and we're going to move into how do these numbers translate to deals? How many deals do I need to figure out?
All right, so here we are in the deal area, and as you can see, there's really no light colored squares in this, light colored yellow, because it's really just pulling information from the previous two tabs. So our target commission gross income is $106,409 at an average commission of 3%. So that gives us our target sales volume of 3,500 or 3,500,000. Some odd dollars. That's really the number that you're shooting for as far as your overall, property, how much you want to sell within a given year in order to hit that commission gross income. And we even break it down further to say, okay, well, what does that number mean in the total transactions? How many homes do I have to sell in order to achieve that number? So if we put an average sales price of say 350,000, which here in the Valley, that is a very normal sales price, very average. To hit that target sales volume, we need to sell 10.1 homes, starting with the 0.1. So I don't know exactly, right? But a little bit more than 10 is about how much you have to sell in order to achieve that number. That really does break it down into the most simplest fashion as ever. Because if you look at tab number 2, you're all confused. Yeah, forget that. 10 homes, that's really your goal. How many homes do you want to sell? 10 homes at $350,000. Mike?
I agree with you. We want to be very careful about, that 0.1. And we're going to talk about this as we go forward a little bit more, but we don't ever want to think about, I gotta sell 10.1. Always think about this in terms of, the people behind the transaction. I can't have part of a person, so I can't have part of a transaction. I need 10 transactions. I need 10.1 transactions, always round up. Always round up.
I need 11. I need 11 transactions. Yeah. Absolutely.
Candace, are you following us so far?
I absolutely am following you.
Are you taking some numbers?
Well, when we get to the end, we can talk a little bit about how this would play into a part-time
Absolutely.
scenario.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about part 4 and leads. This is where we want to suggest a couple of things. Number one, if you're a new agent, remember, of course, we're looking at 10.1 or 11 transactions. If I look at this and say 50% of my time, and if you're new, we want you're guessing, you're shooting in the dark. Would you like to have the same number of sellers as you would buyers? Ideally, yes, sure. Would you like to have more sellers than buyers? Sure. How about buyers and sellers? There are agents out there who prefer working with one over the other, whichever one that might be. I know that my first year in Arizona, I had nothing except buyers because I didn't know a soul in the valley, and just the luck of the draw. The people I kept meeting were buyers. So I did quite a few buyers during that first year. So I didn't actually start getting a lot of sellers till the second year, and I started doing a lot more. And I changed up my marketing plan a little bit. And we'll talk about that in terms of channels in our next section. But when we look at this, let's go ahead and say, I'm new. I don't really know. So let's go ahead and just give it a 50-50 split. So let's say I'm going to forecast and project that I'm going to work with 50% sellers and 50% buyers. Well, of course, if from the previous spreadsheet, it had calculated we needed 10.1, that means we need half. 50% of half of 10.1 is 5, and except if we're rounding up, it's really 6.
6 and 6.
So I need 6 and 6. Notice how I just jumped it to 12. Okay, so I'm looking at total essentially of 12 transactions perhaps. So if that's the case, seller side. Now here's where it gets interesting a little bit. Does every seller I meet, are they going to go all the way and make it to the finish line? Are they going to wind up going to the closing table? And am I going to get a paycheck from every one of them? The reality is things happen. The reality is
that's a reality. Yeah.
And so we want to calculate a success rate. What if, and again, I can't speak to everybody. So let's pick a number out of the air at this point. And let's say for a moment that, if I need 5.1 transactions, but I only have an 80% success rate of getting these transactions in and closed, then I'm going to need, what is 80%? What number does 5.1 become 80% of, so to speak? So if I'm only closing 80%, but I need to close 5.1, I need to actually have 6.3 listings. And 6.3 listings actually means what, Steve?
It's 7. It means 7
listings.
Yes.
Candace got that faster than you, I guess.
I know she did. I was like, Mike, if you would too, could you hover over the 6.3 real quick? Just hover over
it. Uh-huh.
Do you see, there's a lot of these little triangles in here, just as we're going through the sheet. If you need to understand a little bit deeper, I've got, information in here. I just wanted to point that out.
There you go. Okay. And so the same thing we do with, from that listings required, let's take the same listing scenario. When I go do a listing presentation, am I likely to get every listing presentation signed with an exclusive right to sell contract?
Can I say that from experience?
You can.
No. No, the things that you don't want to hear is stuff like, well, we're interviewing right now, because that's the reality of it, right?
Right, exactly.
Oh.
So we're saying the exact same thing here. What if I'm only hitting 80% of the listing appointments I go to that actually result in a contract where I get to actually market the home? Well, again, if I'm taking that and I said, well, if I need to try and get 7 or 6.3 listing contracts, that means I need to be going to 7.9 to get 80% at 6.3. I need to be going to 8. I need a minimum of 8 actual listing appointments this year to get my 5 closings, my 6 closings.
Yes.
So the same thing about the buyer side. Buyer side transactions, as soon as if I'm going to get 6.3 or 7, and I'm only getting 80% of those to the closing table and getting a paycheck, then I'm going to need to get 5.1 or 6 exclusive buyer broker agreements signed and that many contracts accepted from a buyer side.
And I want to point this out too, Mike. I mean, because we're looking at these numbers and it's fantastic, but if you wanted to achieve those same results, to get your goals, your monetary goals, you can do that with not quite 7 or 8 listings. It just really depends. Do you want to play on the shallow end of the pool or the deep end? And sometimes you can get real lucky and get a nice big, $1 million sale. Well, that really helps your overall goal. I just wanted to point that out.
That's exactly correct. There are a couple of ways of beating this system, and that is through data tracking each year you're in the business. Because what the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out, do I have an 80% success rate? Is it higher or is it lower? In reality, you don't know that until you start actually getting into the business. Secondly, if my sales, if I go back to deals and I know that I'm working on the average sales price of 350,000, then the question becomes, can I start working in higher priced neighborhoods, higher priced leads, higher priced homes? You said the word, Steve, luck. If you're lucky, and I will go ahead and say luck is part of it, but hard work will beat luck every day of the week.
Yeah.
And you just have to decide which neighborhoods and leads you want to work, because, and you will have to decide what group of people are you actually comfortable with and can relate to. And because I will tell you from experience, whether it's a $5 million listing or a $100,000 listing, the headache topics might be different, but the intensity of the headaches are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Mike, I have a question for you.
Please.
On the success rate, do you recommend to the agents that they be conservative when they're, I'm guessing as you have more and more years under your belt, you get a better idea of what your rate's going to be. But as a new agent, would I be looking at being more conservative, maybe even lower than the 80%?
That's going to depend a lot about your assessment of your confidence level, your drive. But I would suggest for most new agents, 80% is about right.
Okay.
Now, and what I would suggest also is if your success rate becomes less than that, that's probably a suggestion where we need to work on your skills. Your communication skills, your persuasion skills, your presentation skills, your negotiation skills, and things of that nature.
Yeah, and when you're connecting with somebody, when you're not connecting, and when you are connecting, that 80% is driven around that. I would say 80% of the people I can connect with, 20% maybe not. I just, not everybody connects with you, kind of thing.
So here's something that isn't exactly in this particular spreadsheet, and I think has some room for growth for the next edition of this particular spreadsheet. And that's the kind of the part between leads and part 5, the work. And when I say the work, what I am suggesting here is that we're talking about channels. And I want you to remember something, and I write, and for those of you watching this on video, I want you to write this down: 4%. 4%. Because I already know, again, like the 80% we talked about here, if this is an approximation of what the average person should be able to do without honing skills, for example, I am going to go as far as to say the average person following up on leads should be able to close approximately 4% of unrepresented prospects that come their way. Now, looking at all of this, how many transactions do I need to close? I've got 8 and 7. If I look at target listing appointments and I round that up, 7.9 is 8. If I look at targeted buyer side clients, I've got 6.3. Let's round that up, and I've got 7. 8 plus 7 gives me, I need 15 clients, real clients this year to make, to have a good shot at making my goals. Now, if I need 15, what number does 4% and 15 represent? In other words, 15 is 4% of what number? The number is 375. That tells me that over the course of the year, I need to actually have added to my active database of contacts that I am making communication contacts and building rapport with and working up the ladder. And I say the ladder has 4 steps. They have to like you. They don't like you, they're not going to do business with you. You have to build rapport with them so that you can get to the 3rd step of trust. People will buy a house from you or let you list their house if they trust you, but they might trust more than one agent. So the 4th step in that ladder is loyalty. They'll buy from you if they trust you. They'll wait for you if they're loyal. And so we work our way up that ladder. So let's stop for a moment now and say, I need 4%, or I need to meet 375 people over the course of this year that are actively looking to buy or sell a home if I'm going to get this number. And now many of you are stopping for a moment and thinking, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, 375, what a huge number. Let's break that down for a little bit. 375 divided by 12 months out of the year is 31.25. We don't deal with 0.25 of a person, so let's round it up to 32. 32 people divided by 4 weeks out of the month.
7.81.
7.1. We don't deal with a 0.1. We deal with, we round it up, 8.
We need 8.
8 people divided by 4 days a week.
Yeah, 2 people a day.
That means 4 days during the week, I need to be actively communicating and building rapport with 2 potential prospects. So the question isn't, can I actually talk to 375 people this year? The question is, can I be consistent and make a connection with at least 2 new people a day, 4 days a week? That gives me 3 days when I'm not even doing anything. And if I'm really ambitious, I'll add those 3 days or 1 to 2 of those days. So the next question we got to say is, ask ourselves from a realistic perspective, is that possible? I would suggest to you it is. So now the question is going to be, where am I going to start finding 2 a day? Where am I going to find 375 over the course of a year? And that's when we want to start asking ourselves the question about channels. Channels might be right here. I call channels what our worksheet calls the work, but I'm going to call channels here. Come on, slide over here. It's going to do it this way. All right, fine. We'll do it this way. So buyer lead generation activities and seller lead generation activities. Each one of these would be considered a channel, but let me also say that these channels are not exclusive, and it's not an all-inclusive list. You'll notice the word other in there in various places. So renters direct mail, have I decided to actually start targeting for buyers in apartment communities? Am I advertising on Craigslist? Referrals, am I asking everybody I know for referrals? Mass media advertising, open houses, social media, call capture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Seller lead generation activities, direct mail, open houses. Did I just say open houses twice? Hey, Steve, is it possible to actually get a buyer and a seller from an open house?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Open houses are the bomb.
So we know that this is possible. So open houses, if people are out looking at houses at an open house, there's a good chance that they've got something to sell in order to buy. So special letters, special incentives, social media, withdrawn or expired listings, for sale by owners, mass media advertising. Floor duty isn't necessarily done so much anymore because people have relied on the internet rather than walking into the average real estate office expecting to find the agent on duty. So that's not really as done as much, but referrals and relocation issues. So what I'm going to look at, and I'm also going to say the one thing that is overlooked in this list, your personal sphere of influence database that might be represented by all the telephone numbers in that clever device you call a smartphone. So 375, I got to get to that number. Well, let's start for a moment with the channel called open houses. Again, we want to take a step back and we want to say to ourselves, how many prospective leads that are we might call unrepresented prospective leads might I meet over the course of a weekend's worth of open houses? I'd like to say that I'm being conservative when I say over a weekend, 5. So let's say I have 5 decent prospects that I'm going to meet on any given open house weekend. And let's say for a moment that I've decided that I'm going to commit to 15 weekends over the course of this year. 15 times 5 gives me 75 of the 375. That means, if I get my 4%, I'm partway there. If I get more than 4%, even better. And then let's jump real quick, and I can end this. I can end this whole conversation right now by saying, let's go ahead and open up your cell phone, your smartphone, your clever device, and let's suggest for a moment that you have 300 people in it. We know, again, from statistics, that 4% of those people in there are thinking about moving, buying or selling themselves this year, or they know somebody who is. I've just hit 2, right? Referral channel and sphere of influence channel. And those are all accomplished by over the course of 2 days, or 2 people times 4 days, I'm calling everybody in my database and my cell phone to just catch up, visit, and somehow work into that conversation that, hey, I'm still doing real estate. By the way, do you guys have any plans this year? You planning on buying, selling? Who do you know? Who do you know? And if there's 300 people in that database, and I've got 75 people in open houses, I just got my 375 in 2 channels.
And one other thing to point out when you look at this is that you can make this your own. We put a lot of different suggestions in there. There might be something that we're completely missing here, something that you're finding out, or different ways in which you're working your business in order to achieve. Add those in here. It's, by the way, it's like yellow colored.
Right. It's light yellow colored. So it's follow the golden brick road. Here you go. How do you want? Now, in Snowbird Nation, of course, we really press into and lean into the marketing aspect of figure out who your tribe is and attract your tribe. And depending upon who that tribe is, might actually dictate in many ways the channel by which you're going after those prospective leads. And I'm not going to go into each one of those, but the whole idea, of course, is I want to take this down and go ahead and decide how am I going to go after the people, what channels, and then come up with my number. And I'm going to keep adding channels or expanding channels until such a time that I can realistically get to the 375 number that I came up with based on these numbers and my business plan. How do I expand a channel? Well, maybe instead of 15 weekends, I'm going to do 25 weekends for open houses. How do I add a channel? Maybe instead of open houses and personal database, I'm also going to start calling regularly withdrawn and expired listings and go after those. Social media, I'm going to add that as a campaign. I'm going to join the local Rotary Club, the Kiwanis, the Lions Club, the Masons, the Knights of Columbus, you name the club, the Country Club, wherever it is that people gather and do things that I like to do, and I'm going to go and start networking. Some of those clubs, of course, cost money, which means we got to put that back into the budget and kind of reevaluate a little bit. And some of those channels won't cost anything. Pay per click, pay per play kind of things of that nature. We have that option as well, of course. And if you are struggling to figure out the channels, touch base with your team lead, touch base with your mentor, touch base with other people on your team as to how they're doing it. So then finally, once we get all of this together and we go, okay, I know my numbers, and now I know how I'm going to get to my numbers. Last page, your one-page success plan that you should print off and put on the mirror, put on your refrigerator, put on the mirror in your bathroom, put on your mirror in your desk, so that you wake up every morning and one of the first things you do is look at this and go, yep, this is what I'm working toward. This is what I'm working toward. Because it basically takes all the information from before. What's my take-home income that I'm looking for? 147. Okay, what's the gross commission income? What's the sales volume I need to do to get there? How many buyers? How many transactions required? How many sellers? So how many buyers, how many sellers? We add those up. Buyers engaged, listing appointments that I need to deal with, and what are my channels? I'm not going to say it's that easy and simple, because the process might seem simple. And the execution is where we start developing skill and building better success rates, building better. And this is where I'd say your skill, if you're doing less than 4%, we got to work on skills. If you're doing better than 4%, that's fantastic. Keep it up. Candace, what questions do you have?
Well, a comment. I'm going to guess that as time progresses, your activity options will grow.
Mhm.
Correct? You come up with. I see many creative ideas out there, and some aren't on this list, and some obviously are on this list.
We don't want to give all of our secrets away, Candace.
No, I'm not going to give away any secrets. But through social media, I've seen a lot of ideas that some I think twice about, and some I'm like, that seems kind of fishy to me. But, as having a budget background, this whole concept makes sense to me with a business plan, because you're right. You need to write it down to see it. You do the same thing when you are going on a diet. You write down what you eat, then you actually know what you eat.
What?
When we're budgeting money and we think that all that the $10 a day we stop at Circle K, we don't account for that.
Right.
That adds up. So it's a great tool. It's a great tool, and I'll certainly get working on it and see really what I want to accomplish at least this first year. And I hope that after this first year, I'm going to have much bigger goals.
Yeah, agreed.
There's a couple of things to think about, Candace, when you join a team, as you have done, and we're excited about that. You'll notice here that our team, which is different than an awful lot of other teams, we have different roles on the team that you can work on. For example, if you are generating lead sources and you're really excited about what we say hunting, and finding those leads, but at the same time, you're actively pursuing this part-time because you're actively still pursuing a full-time career, then you can pick which works for you. What kind of time do you have? Do you want to be the lead generation source? Well, that might mean open houses, but it also might mean I don't have the time to do, all the showings because I'm working full time. I don't have the time to work on contracts, but I'm happy to get the lead and pass it off. And my income then becomes limited, for example, to the 15% of the team side commission that might be associated with that. If that's the case, then we want to adjust our plan according to the roles we're able to fulfill. And that tells us where we need to expand or contract for whatever else we might be doing. We have in the past had other agents who considered joining our team who were potentially getting ready to go in for surgeries that would require large periods of recuperation time. And that being said, the discussion had been around, they're an active agent, they're a producing agent. They have their own lead sources and their sphere of influence, and they bring people all the time. They are their own ISA, means inside sales agent. They are their own inside sales agent, getting people pre-qualified and ready to go shopping, etc. But because of their recuperation time, they weren't able to go out and be a showing agent. So they would pass that off to somebody else on the team. And then when it was time to do the contracting, they would get it back. And so that allowed them that flexibility. So depending upon, where you are in the process, or anyone else might be in the process, there's a place and a possibility to continue working on this as you're planning your next stage. So when you say, if I'm working on moving into this full-time while I'm part-time, you got a learning curve here. And while you're learning, you can still have an opportunity to make money and be successful.
Agreed. And what gets measured gets improved. So it's a great way to go ahead and measure yourself here.
I have a quick question. Can you go back to that previous tab?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen the ISA before. What is the ISA?
The inside sales agent is the person who is going to essentially, as we say, buy or die, get a contract or get a restraining order. This is the person who's going to basically be working the phones, because a lot of times when we get a prospect, for example, at an open house, they are also being chased, contacted, pursued by more than one agent. So how do we try and up our odds that we're the agent that's getting attention, that we're the agent that's getting paid attention to, that we're the agent that they want to work with? Well, oftentimes it's either the first agent that's really getting into heavy conversation with the person, or it's the last agent standing, meaning who's calling them persistently enough that after every other agent has given up and dropped out, but these clients are now finally ready, you're the one still calling them and having that conversation. So the ISA is an inside sales agent. It's the person who's working the phones. And it's really easy in Snowbird Nation that if you are generating the lead source, perhaps by your sphere of influence, then you're also probably being the ISA at the same time. So then you wind up gathering both those commission parts in cumulative, those, because you're doing both roles.
Mm. And I'm guessing right now with a low inventory that they're less likely to use a showing agent for your clients, because you're wanting to get out and kind of do your own work if you've got the time to do it. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's not necessarily the case, because we often look at what's the motivation behind the person. We have agents on Snowbird Nation, for instance, that love prospecting, that love going out of their way just to find the next person, get them all excited, then pass them off to one of the other agents. And the other agent becomes the showing agent at that point, because that keeps our team, for example, as having the ability to specialize. And somebody who loves to actually prospect, the last thing I want to do is take them off the prospecting floor, so to speak, the prospecting mode. So if they're really into prospecting, we love for them to prospect, find the next client, throw them over their shoulder, let the rest of the team take care of them, and then having them go after the next one.
So on this example here, the 15%, is that representing the actual 15% revenue, or is that representing that 15% of my income that I want to earn this year is going to be through lead source?
That represents the actual pre-negotiated percentages of the team split for that role per transaction. So
okay,
on any given transaction, there's 15% of the team side split that is attributable to the lead source. So as an example, if that lead source might have been a pay for click, a pay for play, Zillow, Realtor.com, one of these things that, depending upon what sources we might be using at the time to purchase leads, for example, and that happens as one of our channels, then 15% would go back into what we call the Realtor.com Sustainability Fund. And then that would be handed off to an ISA who might choose to be the showing agent, depending upon how that goes. But it would be handed off to another agent where that lead source money is already handed out then, because it came from that source.
okay. I see that. Yeah, I see the difference there as far as that. Those are the set percentages versus how much I think I'm going to generate from lead sources or, being a showing agent. So there was the opposite way of looking at your calculation.
Got it. When you're with EXP, especially Snowbird Nation, the last thing we want to make sure that you're doing, and perhaps in one of the next generations of this particular Excel spreadsheet, we will also include it. But I also want to make sure that you think very hard about the 7 income streams that can be obtained through EXP. And as such, one of the main ones that you will want to start looking at, whether or not you consider yourselves a recruiter, is just that, recruiting. Recruiting is nothing more than exactly the same idea in terms of averages and numbers. And so if you are interested in looking at building a passive income through EXP, recruiting is where that is at, and developing what EXP refers to as a downline for revenue share. And as such, you're going to want to actually look at those same numbers and consider it, again, the same 4%, if you will, and find your channels where you will be making connections with either people who want to be real estate agents and do a career change, or actual realtors somewhere, because there's a couple of things that most people don't realize. The first is the average real estate agent who stays in the business over the course of a career will change real estate companies up to 7 times searching for their actual real estate home. And so by the end of every year or so, you will often run into people who, at least in the back of their mind, they're thinking, am I getting everything I really want and need out of my current real estate home? And if they're even thinking the answer might be no, they're usually open to a conversation. So keep that in mind as you're actually producing your written reports, your written business plan for next year. Because if you're whether you're just starting out and want to just focus only on the buy and the list, that's okay. But eventually you're going to want to start adding this as you go. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Okay, so there you have it. As far as that's the first stage of business planning, at least on Snowbird Nation. One of the great things about being able to write it down like this and having something that allows us to do so, and was kind of alluded to earlier, because only 3% on average of people across the world actually write down their goals while committing to them. And a goal not written down is merely a dream. And we want to actually be able to make those goals into actionable steps. And that's where business planning part 2 comes into play, where we sit down and we start talking about what are your numbers specifically, and what are your channels, and what can we do to support you on actually achieving those numbers through those channels, and what training do you need to actually be more successful working those channels.
For sure. There's plenty of opportunity. Dr. Mike, Candace, guys, thank you so much for joining. Mike bringing us through that. And, again, if you see this presentation and you're curious about these goals, please, contact the person that gave you this, and or reach out to us directly. And we're more than happy to take you on through it again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining, everybody.
Hey, just a quick note. If this video resonated with you and you happen to be a real estate agent or interested in becoming a real estate agent, please reach back out to the person who shared this video with you. And if you don't have somebody who shared this video with you and you just happen to find it, then reach out to us, the numbers below, and let us know that you saw all of this on SBN and Snowbird Nation, because we'd love to talk to you about joining us where your real estate dreams take flight.